Welcome time travelers and welcome new time travelers. As always, if you're new to this channel and enjoy learning about history, one event at a time, then don't forget to hit that like button, comment, and subscribe. Now, let's get into it. On this day in 1787, the Constitutional Convention opened in Philadelphia, where 55 state delegates, initially charged with amending the Articles of Confederation, later drafted the Constitution of the United States. Moving on to 1810, having severed ties with Spain and the Viceregal government, the Municipal Council of Buenos Aires established an anonymous government. Now let's make a stop in 1878 when American entertainer Bill Bojangles Robinson, best known for his dancing roles with Shirley Temple in the films of the 1930s, was born in Richmond, Virginia. 1889 is when aircraft designer Igor Sikorsky, who successfully developed the helicopter, was born in Kyiv, Ukraine, Russian Empire. 6 years later, in 1895, the trial of acclaimed Irish writer Oscar Wilde ended with him being found guilty of committing acts of gross indecency with certain male persons. He was sentenced to 2 years of hard labor. Moving on to 1935, which brought us two events. The first event is American track and field standout Jesse Owens set 3 world records and equaled one other at a meet in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Both of these are sports events. The second event is American baseball player Babe Ruth hit the 714th and last home run of his career. He retired later that year. In 1939, British actor Sir Ian McLean was born. He earned acclaim for his work in the Royal Shakespeare Company and for such films as Lord of the Rings trilogy that came out in 2001, 2002, and 2003, respectively. 1946 is when Abdallah I, ruler of Transjordan, proclaimed himself king. 1961. In 1961, in a speech before Congress, U.S. President JFK committed the U.S. to land a man on the moon by the end of the decade. The goal was achieved with Apollo 11 in 1969. 8 years later, in 1869, Midnight Cowboy was released in theaters, and the drama, which starred John Volta and Dustin Hoffman, went on to become the only X-rated film to win the Academy Award for Best Picture. Now, I don't recall what each rating would need to meet that criteria, though. And I want to say in one of my This Day in History, I do mention about the different ratings. Anyway, let's continue to 1977 when George Lucas's space opera film Star Wars, later known as Star Wars Episode 4 New Hope, was released, launching one of the most successful and influential franchises in motion picture history. Next one's going to be a long one, so bear with me, please. In 1989, Mikhail Gorbachev, head of the Soviet Union's Communist Party, was elected president of the USSR by the newly commissioned 2,250 member Congress of People's Disputes. His tenure would be limited to 2 5-year terms. The result of the secret balloting was 2,123 to 87. Before the voting, Gorbachev was publicly and sharply questioned about his policies and was made, among other things, to defend his use of plush official home in the Crimea. During the debates, certain disputes contained that Gorbachev would rival Napoleon in power if he were both leader of the Communist Party and head of the government. Among those in attendance was Boris Yeltsin, the former party leader in Moscow, who became a celebrity by challenging Gorbachev. Yeltsin failed to win a seat among the 542 members of the Supreme Soviet, the legislative body, and the revamped government structure. The Congress responded to public indignation and voted on May 29th to allow Yeltsin to accept the seat offered to him by one of the victorious candidates. Okay, moving on to 2002, when Laszlo holds parliamentary elections under proportional representation system new to Africa, in which each voter votes separately for the party of his choice and the district representative. The system is meant to discourage unrest by making it easier for smaller parties to gain seats. Nine years later, in 2011, the last episode of Oprah Winfrey Show aired. The long-running TV program had helped make Winfrey one of the richest and most influential women in the United States. Now, 4 years ago, in 2020, George Floyd, an unarmed African American man, was killed during an arrest in Minneapolis, Minnesota, setting off massive protests around the country and generating greater support for the Black Lives Matter movement. Police officer Derek Chauvin was later convicted for his murder. I remember this one, but then again, I should, because it was only 4 years ago. Anyway, that will bring us back to 2024 and our current history. I will see you in the next one.